I can almost guarantee they're about to throw this man under the bus. But I want to be very clear before I start this. This guy's a jackass. It's insane how someone gets implemented and you think that it can't get worse than the previous mayor until it is. And Eric Adams for sure is a jackass. Make no mistake. But he says something which is very interesting that I know a lot of activists are about to fucking be fucking mad at. You'll know it once you hear it. Let's read this. I'm gonna read this from the Blaze real quick. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has called out Black Lives Matter activists as hypocrites for protesting George Floyd's murder in 2020, but failing to take the streets in protest of recent black-on-black shootings. He says the NYC channel on Wednesday asked a Democrat how he could get a handle on mounting shootings in the city, including Tuesday's subway shooting. Adams replied, "I thought Black Lives Matter. Where are all those who stated Black Lives Matter? Then go do an analysis of who was killed or shot last night. I was up all night speaking to my commanders in the Bronx. The victims were black. Many of the shooters were black." He then put a well-known question to adults and caregivers. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Why are 16, 17, 18-year-olds out in our streets armed with guns late at night? When are we going to start asking these serious questions? Well, Eric Adams, people have long been answering and asking these serious questions, but they are generally rolled at, depends on what color they are when they bring this topic up. If they're black, then they are self-hating, Uncle Tom, coon, house nigga, all this other shit. If they are white, then they're just racist pieces of shit. So it just depends on who you ask. However, or who you are referring to and what their color is. However, this question has been proposed and answers have been being sought long before you stumbled upon this in fucking 2022 when you decided to say it publicly. This is something that, let me refresh this real quick. This is something that a lot of people, it makes them uncomfortable to talk about because it's all about narratives, unfortunately, with a lot of these people. It's like, what specific narrative can I paint in the event that I talk about whatever this is? And then it says, recalling the sea of protesters in New York City, says, if Black Lives Matter, then the thousands of people I saw on the street when Floyd was murdered should be on the street right now stating that lives of these black children that are dying every night matter. That we can't be hypocrites. Look, I mean, again, you're not saying anything new. This is something that, again, people have been proposing forever. Here's my thing about this subject. I did a speech last year, if I'm not mistaken, where I talked about this. And I was like, hey, the truth is the truth, no matter who it comes from. So just because you might not like the way someone says it, you may not like who is saying it, or even that you think that their individual motives are nefarious or whatever. The truth is the absolute truth. The problem with this subject matter is that it had become so touchy to where everybody was so damn focused on, well, you do this, so you're a hypocrite, right? So the problem almost goes completely unaddressed. Right? This issue which Eric Adams is talking about goes almost completely unaddressed because everybody is so worried about like what particular motives. And then they point out, you're inconsistent on this. Like, do y'all want to solve the problem or not? Because if you do want to solve the problem, at some point you have to get beyond, okay, well, you also go do this. Because the problem then goes completely unaddressed, and we're just talking about who's more inconsistent or whatever. Activists, race hustlers have, a lot of them. There are people that have tried to address this problem, and they are, let's say, doing something. It may not be the most effective work, but they're doing what they can to try to alleviate this fucking problem. However, there are those that have completely ignored it And you even look at how we talk about black life in this country, right? If it's not centered around racism or some like, okay, you're black or that person's black, therefore they got the short end of the stick because they're black. So yeah, they'll talk about it if there's a white perpetrator, especially, and they kill a black person and it's automatically racist. It'll get headline news or whatever. Or you have like an instance with like police officers, so that'll get covered. But here's the fact of the matter, and whether you like that I'm saying it or not, it's just the facts of the matter. With this subject, there are more people that are dying, particularly black people, by every statistical metric, that are dying at the hands of the black people. Okay? The pieces of shit who want to act like that issue is not an issue or even a unique one, right? So even a unique, because the reason why it's so unique is that when you consider that they make up 12, definitely in America's case, 12 or 13% of the population, but then you're representing you have a big overrepresentation, right, of the homicide victims, that it's not even equal, right? So you have an instance where they'll say, well, white people kill white people more than anything else, which is true. However, they don't kill nearly in large numbers in like comparison to their population as black people do. You cannot like that I'm saying it. It's just a fact. And that includes, which they'll try to blame, like, well, this person's poor, or these lower socioeconomic issues are stimulating this. White Appalachian fucking country white folk that are poor as fuck don't kill to this degree. They don't. That's just not my opinion. That's just a fact. You cannot like that I'm saying it. You can try to fuzzy up the numbers to try to pin it. Well, it's not about this. It's a culture problem. That's all it is. It is a culture problem that will go completely unaddressed. So as long as everybody's worrying about what motives do people have when they speak about this particular issue. This is something I used to talk about a lot. I used to talk about this stuff very extensively because I participated in a culture that basically terrorized black communities. Right. And I specifically had a hand in doing that. And when I grew up and I grew up banging, that's just the facts. Right. I mean, say what you will about it. That's the fact. I don't like to, whether people like have different words, they call it black on black, like it's just black homicide. It's all it is. Just people that are dying due to dumb shit. Often a lot of these people are young. And yeah, there's other social issues that need to be addressed in order to try to fix this problem, particularly with these lack of men that are in these households that are raising these children. It's funny you talk about, he brought up Eric Adams, like, well, while we have all these young teenagers that are sitting out on the street strapped, where they fathers at? You ready to talk about that? These are cultural problems. But this is my thing and why I hate it so much, that people have they've equaled not only black people to violence, which is insulting, despite what the data says, it's insulting, but they try to deviate from the cultural problem to just blame it on like poverty or elements of that. And I've said this, I say this all the time, actually. It requires nothing of you to simply not kill someone, right? To not want to go towards violence that could end up when someone severely hurt or killed, especially people that have nothing to do. It requires nothing of you to just not do that. So the fact that people say poor equals you have to be a homicidal, murderous jackass, especially black people, is fucking insulting. Boss, you want to talk about other statistical data? Let's compare and contrast. Black people in 2022 versus black people when my grandmother grew up, doing like Jim Crow era laws and all that stuff. They were in a far less economic situation than what I am right now. And what even people that live in the hood, they're in a far worse economic situation. There was more, and I'm not saying that it doesn't exist even to this degree now. I think it appears in other ways. But we can agree that these sort of racist, legitimately racist laws. Were far more of them back then than there are now. Yet there wasn't this beef or plex between other black people to the degree that it ended up in so many people being killed by other black people for virtually nothing if we want to get down to the nitty-gritty. So for you to blame that when we not only have other examples of other races that in their areas where they're poor don't seem to have this fucking problem, but you can just go through history where you had lower socioeconomic status, especially because of these racist-based laws, where they didn't result to that. So what changed? That's going to require a cultural problem. Oh, that's a cultural problem that has to get addressed. That's going to require so many people to look in the fucking mirror to look at how they attribute it to it. You've heard me say this before as well. I grew up, there's a song you still find, it's called Bring the Beef, right? This was like probably my most popular, when I was like coming up in the scene in Dallas, that was me and J Don's most popular song. I don't know, I had the second verse. Charlotte, which was a chick, she had the first verse. It was lucky to get to my verse, let alone the third verse, which J Don had, before a fucking fight broke out and motherfuckers was beating each other up every single time we performed that song. J Don will attest to this. We lucky to get there before they had to shut the club down or whatever it was, because people were beating each other up already. Especially when I started talking about the colors and shit. Like I had that line where I said he claimed blue, but his mouth dripping red. Motherfuckers in there banging and doing all kinds of shit. Every time we played that, every time we performed that song live. Every time. So I look at it like I've seen the impact of something that's strictly culture, that's not political. Of the impact of even me and something like that, just a song, sending motherfuckers into a tirade. And again, granted, the song was about beating motherfuckers up. But it's like, okay, that's obviously attributing to a problem there, okay? That's what so many people don't want to do, which is why this is my frustration with it, because the problem almost goes entirely unaddressed. Because again, everybody's so worried about the ulterior motives. Well, you ain't out here doing this and doing that. You know what I mean? And the problem almost never goes addressed. And there are people that are attempting to do good work, certainly in this regard, certainly with like conflict resolution. I was my man's Maj Toure from Black Guns Matter. I know he's a good friend of mine. And, he posted about this the other day. It was like, and what's going on in Philadelphia is like, if you one of these people that's out here, like your whole entire like brand, your music and everything is out here talking about killing motherfuckers and everything, I don't want to hear you say anything about, why we have this senseless violence going on, because basically you're contributing to it, right? You're contributing to it, which is the point that Maj is making, and he's right. But the conversation is almost always dishonest. Again, bring it up. Everybody's going to point to your motives. Like, why would you dare say such a thing? Oh, well, I'm going to blame it on X and this, and that. And it's gotten so bad to the point to where you got folks, other black folks, making an excuse for other black folk killing motherfuckers because of my poverty and other dumb shit. It's like, so you are really going to go that route. Other black people going that route, claim they pro-black fist in the air, and they operating on a default that black people have to be violent. They just have to be that way just because of their environment. That's bullshit. Or economic environment. That's bullshit. There's problems. You talk about this families, lack of thereof, or rather, all those issues that I've been talking about for a decade. If those don't go addressed, then the problem's going to persist. So do you want to solve it or not? I guess is the question. So whether you're a pro-black fist in the air activist or one of their allies, or you're on the opposite side, doesn't matter. Do you want the problem to be corrected or not? And in order for it to be corrected, there has to be an honest conversation about the actual issue, Not what you think this person is up to, or y'all getting into a battle of, oh, well, you don't do this when the white people do it. Like, none of that shit. That then takes the focus off what the actual problem is, which almost anybody should be able to acknowledge. Period.
You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Cannon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.